Hello everyone, welcome back to Classic Automotive Services. Right, this week we've had yet another really busy week. We'll start off with the TR8, the silver one. As you can see from the engine bay, there's a big bit missing. So we've actually removed the inlet manifold, annoyingly, to get the carburetors off, due to not being actually able to get to the bottom fixings on the carbs. On the Strongbergs, they're a bit bulkier than SUs, and you just can't get in there to get the bottom fixings undone. But it was a good thing that we did remove the inlet manifold, as we found where all the coolant had gone. At some point in its life, well, before it had been put into storage, it's had a new lower heater rail fitted underneath the manifold. So the manifold was actually loose, all the fixings weren't tight. They were barely finger tight, if that. And this hose here hadn't actually been done up. It pulled straight off the pipe. So it's leaked all the coolant into the bottom of the valley. It's actually rotted the valley pan gasket, which we're going to replace obviously anyway because it's got the manifold off. So we're going to have to do is very carefully hoover that out and then try and get the manifold gasket off without breaking it up too much. Hopefully it won't be too stuck, and just very carefully remove it without dropping any debris into the engine, as that's the last thing we want to do, as then it's going to be all in the engine, and it's just you don't want to do that. So I mean, there's probably going to be a little bit gets in there and sits on top, but we can hopefully get that out and clean it. It's going to have an oil change anyway. So what I'll probably do is, once the valley pan gasket's off, if anything does go in there, I will pour some degreaser across the top of the cam and all the followers, so anything in there just literally will go straight to the sump, because that's the drain for the sump, oil drain for the sump anyway. So that way it'll all go into the sump. I can then drop the oil out and change the oil, and that will get anything out. That's the plan anyway. But the plan is to not get anything in there in the first place. But we have to cross that bridge when we get to it, if it does get anything in there. I'm not going to touch it because it is very fragile and it is breaking up. It's right in the middle. But we're going to look at the carburetors, as I've started doing one of them already. I've got one of the carburetors here done. The other one is in bits. We'll show you that in a minute. And these are Zenith Strongberg CD175s, or 175 CD is the correct term. And also on the TR8, they have a automatic choke on them. It's a water heated choke, which is all adjustable. From what I know about them, they're a bit of a pain in the ass to get set up right, and don't work overly great half the time, from what I can gather. There is a kit out there which you can do away with them auto chokes. We're going to see if these ones will actually work properly. We've stripped the carbs, completely rebuilt them. Well, this one, we're still in the process of doing that one, and cleaned all the mechanism up on the choke, new seals and everything, so hopefully it will work. When the choke, way it works is obviously water goes through it, heating it. So when you first come to start the car from cold, you activate your throttle. You press the throttle once, let it go, and there's a plunger in there, which will then come down in here, which will open the throttle slightly. And it also then allows more fuel to go through the mechanism to enrich the mixture. And then as it's got a bimetal sort of coil spring in there, so as that warms up, it then releases and then turns the choke off. Something else to excuse me. Something else to look out for on these carbs is the temperature compensator. They get sticky as they just get old, and they fatigue as well, don't work correctly, and they can cause poor running. The way you can test it, roughly test it's working, is take the plastic cover off and warm it up with a hot air gun, and then the little plunger, you should be able to just touch that and it will move freely. If it's not, then it's not working. That's about all you can retest on it, as I can't find any figures on what temperature it should be doing things at, and you've got to be able to test the temperature of it. So if it moves, it should be pretty good. But this one's all rebuilt with new needle valve, as the old one was completely and utterly stuck. I did get freed off, but as you've got to take all the manifold and everything off to get the carbs off, I'm not going to put them in and chance them. So the float heights will reset, and we've got some different needles and jets in there, as the other ones are completely and utterly knackered and look like they've been in acid. So we've got some good second-hand needles and jets in there, which we had, and they're perfectly good, so we put them in. And they're original parts, so they're probably better than the new ones you buy these days anyway. So we've got the other one all in bits, and as you can see, it's in quite a state. We've got corrosion around the top of here where the diaphragm sits, which we've got to clean up, and all around the top of here. So the diaphragm's never going to seal. The diaphragm itself, this is out the first carburetor, huge split in it there, and it did have another one. Where is it? Another little one there, and as you can see, it's just completely rotted. It's no good. So change the diaphragms. One thing to look out for when you're buying new diaphragms, I've actually managed to source ethanol rated ones, as although it's not in contact with fuel, you still got the fuel vapors in the carburetor, which will rot any rubber components. So anything we do on fuel systems on the cars, what we do, we will always uprate it for ethanol. Yeah, that's in the modern fuels. And you can get ethanol rated diaphragms as well. And one thing to look out for that I was about to mention is you don't want, there's a lot of aftermarket ones out there which are cheap and nasty, and they're really stiff. They're quite thick and they're quite stiff. You may think that's going to be better quality, but unfortunately it's not. They're wrong. They need to be quite nice, supple and flimsy, as if they're too stiff, the dash spot won't lift correctly. So you'd want them to be nice and flimsy and not too thick. So that's something else to look out for. We've got plenty of pictures of the carbs all stripped down. Obviously there's the choke mechanism, which I haven't stripped yet, which has got to go through very carefully. What I can do is I'll quickly take this cover off and show you the temperature compensator inside. All it is a little bimetal strip. I haven't actually cleaned this one up yet. I haven't even looked inside it. Let's just pop the two screws off. There we go. In here, all you've got is a little bimetal strip, which when it warms up, it curves slightly and then moves that plunger, which opens up the hole. And so when it's warmed up, you should be able to just touch that. That's fully closed at the moment. You should be able to just touch that plunger and it moves back in very, very easily with a slightest little touch. So that's something to look out for on the Zeniths. They're a fairly complex little carburetor, especially with the automatic choke system on them. SUs are far simpler, but these are they're as good as SUs for sort of reliability and drivability. You're never going to get a great deal of performance out of them, but that's what they are. What else we had in this week? At the beginning of the week, we had the white Stag in for its carburetor swap, and that went all really well. It runs an absolute dream now. The owner is absolutely over the moon with it. Can't believe the difference in the car. He now drives it as much as he possibly can because he loves it. The performance is far, far better. He actually noticed that there was a massive difference between the Holly and the Edelbrock carburetor, performance-wise. Even though the Holly was actually running fairly well at wide open throttle, the Edelbrock still outperformed it. And it's also just a far better carburetor for drivability. The way they deliver the fuel is far, far better than the Holly. The Holly is a good carburetor if you're going, say, racing with it. It's a carburetor that just wants to go flat out all the time. So he noticed that. It was really, really good. Loves the car. Actually purred when it was finished. It will be coming back in to have the gearbox out in a couple of weeks' time, as it's got quite a bad oil leak on the back of the engine coming from the rear crankshaft oil seal. So we've got to pull the gearbox out and change the rear main oil seal. So we've got some pictures and a little video of it actually running, so we put them in the video. And other than that, we've got the Cortina, which we're going to have a look at. So we've got the engine back in the Cortina, and yes, it does run very, very nicely. It performs well, as well as a 1300 is going to perform anyway, and it sounds absolutely lovely. We've driven it for the first time back in a couple of days ago now. When was that? A couple of days ago. Can't really think what day it was. Probably Thursday, I think it was. We drove it. We've still got just one or two little jobs to finish off on it on Monday. We've got to relocate the horns due to them not being able to go in the original location because of the Webbers. The horns are mounted here on this bracket, so we've got to relocate the horns and the washer bottle. Then we've got to change the clutch and the brake fluid, as the brakes are a little bit spongy due to the state of the fluid, and so is the clutch. But they are working, just need to change fluids, and then going to give it its oil change as well, as it is pretty much running now. We've run the camshaft in, bedded the rings in, and it's ready to go. It really does sound good. We'll fire it up in just a second, but if you look at the clutch fluid, it's full of this congealed jelly, so we've got to change the fluids in it. So the car's been off the road a little while, so it was kind of expected it was going to need some other little bits and bobs doing to it, but we'll start it up. It is a little bit cold at the moment, so we won't rev it too hard, but it sounds really, really nice. There we go, we'll knock it off. So it's actually really a nice little package that we managed to put together on it. I was concerned that the camshaft was going to be a little bit too aggressive that we picked, but with the standard weight flywheel, that has really smoothed it out, and it's actually a lot better driving than I thought it was going to be, and it's giving it a massive performance increase. So yep, it's made a massive difference. The owner has been up and seen it and heard it running. He's absolutely over the moon with it. And it is a wedding car, so if any of you petrol heads want a nice little wedding car, that's what it's aimed at, is a petrol head for his wedding car or her wedding car. Then get in touch and we can put you in touch with the owner. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all we've got this week. We've still got the Cure cars waiting to come in, which some of them may be making an appearance very shortly. Hopefully next week we'll have another Stag in. That's in for just some minor work on brakes and things like that. So I think we'll leave it there, and we'll put all the photographs and little videos of what we got in this week. So please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.